Hey guys, tonight we are going to close our eyes and drift back, way back, to a time when the world was ruled from a throne room in the clouds. We're climbing Mount Olympus, where the air itself crackles with divine energy and cosmic law is treated less like a rule book and more like a list of suggestions. The beings who live here are beautiful, petty, brilliant, and terrifyingly powerful. The standard uniform is a toga, which seems drafty, and the mortality rate for uninvited guests is, let's just say, aggressively high. Honestly, you probably won't survive this, but the views are to die for. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. As always, I'd love to see where you're all listening from tonight, so feel free to post your city or country and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are standing in a hall so vast it seems to contain its own sky. The floor beneath your feet is polished obsidian, and it doesn't just reflect the light, it reflects the entire cosmos. Swirling nebulae and distant, glittering stars drift lazily across its surface, as if the universe itself is the welcome mat. The air is cool and thin, carrying the scent of ozone from a recent thunderstorm and a strange, metallic tang of raw power. Towering columns of impossibly white marble, veined with pure gold, rise up to a ceiling that isn't there. Instead, you see the living sky, a swirling canvas of dusk and dawn happening all at once. And at the far end of this celestial chamber, upon a throne carved from a single, solid block of moonstone, sits the reason you're here. He isn't just a man. Not really. He is a presence, a weight in the air, a fundamental force of the universe given human form. This is Zeus. His beard is a storm cloud, thick and dark, streaked with veins of silver lightning. His eyes are not one color, but the shifting, turbulent gray of a coming squall. One moment they are calm and clear, the next they are flashing with an inner light that promises untold destruction. He leans forward, his elbow resting on the arm of the throne, his chin resting on his fist. A faint smile plays on his lips, but it doesn't reach his eyes. That smile is the sliver of sun that breaks through the clouds just before a downpour. It's a warning. His power isn't just something he uses. It's something he is. The sky is his mood ring. When he is pleased, the sun shines warmly across the Aegean, blessing the olive groves and turning the sea to sparkling wine. When he is contemplative, soft, thoughtful clouds drift over the mortal world below. But when he is angry, the sky blackens, the wind howls like a grieving beast, and he hurls jagged spears of pure energy that can shatter mountains. To live under Zeus is to live at the mercy of a king whose emotional state dictates the weather, the harvest, and whether you'll be struck by lightning on your way to the market. This is the great paradox of Zeus, the contradiction that sits at the very heart of the Greek cosmos. He is the divine arbiter of justice. He is the upholder of Themis, the cosmic law, the natural order of things. He is Zeus Xenios, the sacred protector of the host-guest relationship, a bond so holy that to violate it was to invite divine destruction upon your entire household. Oaths sworn in his name are unbreakable. Kings who rule with cruelty and dishonor answer to him. He is the supreme court, the final appeal for mortals and gods alike. And yet, he is the single greatest lawbreaker in creation. His personal life is a testament to broken oaths, to deception, to the absolute corruption that comes with absolute power. He is the patron of order and the agent of chaos, all wrapped in one formidable, thunder-wielding package. To understand how this one being can contain such a volatile mixture, you have to go back to the beginning. Not the very beginning, with the formless chaos, but his beginning. He wasn't born a king. He was born a fugitive, the last of 6 children destined for a truly horrific fate. His father, Cronus, the ruling Titan, had been given a prophecy. One of his children would overthrow him, just as he had overthrown his own father, Uranus. Cronus, not one for nuanced solutions, decided on a simple, if gruesome, policy of risk management. As each of his children were born to his sister wife, Rhea, he would take the infant and swallow it whole. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon. One by one, they were consumed, imprisoned in the cavernous darkness of their father's divine gut. Rhea's heart was breaking. When her 6th child, Zeus, was born, she couldn't bear it. In desperation, she spirited the baby away to the rugged, untamed island of Crete. She found a deep cave on Mount Ida, a secret place hidden from the all-seeing eyes of her husband. To trick Cronus, she swaddled a large stone in infant's blankets and presented it to him. Blinded by paranoia, he swallowed the stone without a second thought, believing his reign was finally secure. It's a classic case of a tyrant so consumed by fear that he can't even distinguish his own child from a piece of geology. So, while his siblings languished in the dark, Zeus grew up in the wild beauty of Crete. He was nursed by a goat named Amalthea, whose horn, when broken, would become the cornucopia, the horn of plenty, capable of producing endless food and drink. His guardians were the Corybantes, fierce, armored male warriors who served the great mother goddess. This is a wonderfully quirky little tidbit from the myth. Whenever the infant Zeus would cry, these intimidating soldiers would perform a wild, clashing war dance, beating their spears against their shields to create a deafening rhythm. They were a divine noise-canceling machine, their ritualized clangor drowning out the baby's wails so Cronus would never hear him. You can almost picture it as the world's first and most necessary heavy metal concert, all to protect one very important child. When Zeus came of age, powerful and clever, it was time to fulfill the prophecy. He couldn't do it alone. First, he needed his army, his swallowed siblings. He secured a special emetic from the Titaness Mede and disguised himself as Cronus's cupbearer. He served his father the potion-laced wine, and the effect was immediate and dramatic. First, Cronus vomited up the stone, which would later be placed at Delphi as a sacred object. Then, out came his children, undigested and fully grown. Poseidon, Hades, Hera, Demeter, Hestia. They emerged from the darkness, understandably furious and ready for a fight. What followed was not a single glorious battle, but a decade-long war of attrition that shook the foundations of reality. The Titanomachy, the younger gods, the Olympians, fought from Mount Olympus. The older gods, the Titans, fought from Mount Othrys. For 10 years, the cosmos was a battlefield. Mountains were torn from their roots and hurled as projectiles. The seas boiled, the forests burned, and the sky screamed with the fury of their war. Zeus realized he needed more firepower. He descended into Tartarus, the deepest pit of the underworld, and freed two sets of his uncles that Cronus had imprisoned, the Cyclops and the Hecatoncheires. The Cyclops, masters of the forge, were so grateful that they crafted divine weapons for the three brothers. For Hades, they made the Helm of Darkness, which could render the wearer invisible. For Poseidon, they forged the Trident, a weapon so powerful it could shake the earth and stir the seas. And for Zeus, they created his signature weapon, the masterwork of their craft, the lightning bolt. Imagine holding that for the first time. Not just a spark, but the source, the very concept of lightning, tamed and shaped into a celestial spear in your hand. Then came the 100-handers. It's hard to even picture them. 3 beings, each with 50 heads and 100 powerful arms. In the final, decisive battle, they unleashed their full might, a relentless barrage of boulders that buried the Titans and secured victory for the Olympians. After the war, the spoils had to be divided. The 3 brothers, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, cast lots to determine their domains. Hades drew the short straw, receiving the gloomy, unseen realm of the underworld. Poseidon drew the seas, a vast and turbulent kingdom. And Zeus, the leader, the liberator, won the grand prize, the sky and the heavens, making him the undisputed king of all gods and men. Some might say it was a rigged election, a classic case of management looking after itself, but his leadership in the war was undeniable. He had earned his throne. From this throne, he ruled, and a core part of that rule was dispensing justice. For the ancient Greeks, the world was a dangerous and often unfair place. The powerful preyed on the weak. It was Zeus, in his role as the great equalizer, who offered a sense of cosmic balance. He was the god you prayed to when a king broke a treaty, or when a powerful neighbor stole your land. This role was so central to his worship that it became the foundation for one of history's most enduring institutions. The ancient Olympic Games, a mainstream historical fact we all learn about, weren't just an athletic competition. They were a religious festival held every 4 years at the sanctuary of Olympia, all in honor of Zeus. During the Games, a sacred truce was declared across Greece, allowing athletes and pilgrims to travel safely. At the heart of it all was his temple, which housed one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, a colossal 40-foot-tall statue of Zeus, sculpted by the master Phidias. It was made of a wooden frame covered in plates of ivory for his skin and sheets of pure gold for his robes, his throne inlaid with ebony and precious stones. Imagine walking into that temple, the air thick with incense, and seeing this immense, majestic figure gazing down at you with calm, indomitable power. It was designed to inspire awe, to remind every visitor that there was a power far greater than any mortal king. Yet, for every tale of his divine justice, there are a dozen tales of his divine indiscretions. This is where the mighty king becomes a cosmic predator. His vows to his own sister wife, Hera, meaning less than nothing. His affairs are legendary, not just for their number, but for their sheer creativity and audacity. He rarely approached his conquests as himself. Deception was his primary tool, often involving a startling transformation. You are a queen named Leda, walking by a riverbank. You hear a frantic splashing, the beating of enormous wings. A swan, the most magnificent you have ever seen, is being pursued by a fierce eagle. It is pure white, its neck a graceful curve, its eyes intelligent and pleading. Taking pity on the beautiful creature, you gather it into your arms to protect it. The swan settles against you, heavy and warm, and then you feel it, the shimmer of divine power, the realization that this is no mere bird. This is Zeus. It's a bizarre, almost surreal image. A god choosing the form of a swan to seduce a mortal queen. You have to admit, it's a bold strategy. It certainly beats sending a message on a dating app. Are you or Europa, a Phoenician princess, playing with your friends in a meadow by the sea? A bull wanders into your midst, but it's unlike any you've ever seen. Its coat is a brilliant snow white, and a single silver star marks its brow. Its horns are curved like a crescent moon, and its eyes are as gentle as it does. It is utterly placid, radiating a sense of profound peace. Charmed, you and your friends weave garlands of flowers for its neck. Emboldened by its gentleness, you climb onto its broad back. The moment you are settled, the bull turns and charges, not with violence, but with incredible speed, right into the sea. It doesn't sink. It gallops across the waves as if they were solid ground, carrying you away from your home, across the water to the island of Crete. This majestic, gentle creature was, of course, Zeus in disguise, kidnapping a princess through sheer, disarming charm. Perhaps the most audacious of all was his approach to Danae. Her father, a king, had been told a prophecy that his grandson would kill him. So he did what any paranoid, mythological king would do. He locked his only daughter in a bronze, windowless chamber, a prison designed to keep any suitor out. But you cannot barricade a fortress against a god who controls the very elements. Zeus didn't need a door. He transformed himself into a shower of golden light, a shimmering cascade of divine essence, and poured through the cracks in the roof, seeping into the chamber to be with her. It was the ultimate display of power. Your walls, your locks, your fears, they are all meaningless to me. Why did he do it? Was it simple, uncontrollable lust, a form of divine ego, a need to conquer and possess? Or was it something more strategic? Historians still argue whether Zeus's constant affairs were meant to be seen as simple moral failings or as a vital political tool, creating a network of demigod children to solidify Olympian influence across the mortal world. By fathering heroes and kings like Heracles, Perseus, and Minos, he was literally populating the earth with his own bloodline, weaving his power directly into the fabric of human dynasties. Each affair was a political merger, a divine takeover bid. This constant philandering created a deeply dysfunctional family dynamic on Olympus. He was not a warm or doting father. He was a patriarch who demanded absolute loyalty. He clearly favored some of his children, like Athena, whose birth was as unconventional as any of his affairs. He swallowed her pregnant mother, Medeia, and Athena later sprang fully formed from his forehead in a suit of armor. He was less fond of others, like Ares, the god of war, whose brute nature he found distasteful, and Hephaestus, the smith god, whom he allegedly threw from Olympus for siding with Hera. And then there was Hera, his queen, his sister, the goddess of marriage and childbirth. Every affair was a direct insult to her domain and her honor. The tension between them was the source of constant drama, a celestial cold war that frequently turned hot. Zeus, for all his power, was often henpecked, wary of his wife's legendary temper. But he rarely faced her wrath directly. Instead, Hera would channel her fury towards his lovers and their illegitimate children, a topic we will surely explore in more detail. It's safe to say that marriage counseling on Olympus would have been a very high-risk and very short-lived profession. So you stand there in the throne room of the cosmos, looking at this king. He is the pillar holding the world in place, the source of order and the guarantor of justice. He is also the crack running right down the center of that pillar, a being of unrestrained appetite and monumental hypocrisy. He is a protector and a predator, a father and a tyrant. The air still hums with his power, a low, constant vibration that you feel in your bones. You understand now that he is not good, nor is he evil. He is simply absolute, and as he turns his stormy gaze towards you, you feel the immense, terrifying weight of what it means to be noticed by God. The heavy, oppressive presence of Zeus, which had settled on you like a physical weight, suddenly shifts. The king of the cosmos doesn't startle. It's doubtful that he could be startled, but his posture changes. A subtle hardening of the jaw, a slight narrowing of his stormy eyes. He senses a rival power approaching, the only one in all creation whose authority he is forced to acknowledge. The air, which smelled of ozone and raw energy, now carries a new fragrance, something rich and deep, like lilies and ripe pomegranates. A figure emerges from the shimmering archway that leads into the throne room, and she doesn't walk, she glides. This is Hera, queen of the heavens, sister and wife of Zeus. She is arrestingly beautiful, but it is not the playful, approachable beauty of a nymph. Hers is a severe, regal magnificence. Her dark hair is intricately braided and bound with a golden diadem that proclaims her royal status. Her eyes are large and dark, and they seem to see everything, not with the flashing anger of Zeus, but with the cool, steady assessment of a judge. She wears a flowing white peplos, a simple garment made divine by the way it hangs on her frame, and every fold seems to radiate an unshakable dignity. If Zeus is a raging thunderstorm, all chaotic power and unpredictable flashes of light, Hera is the immense, unmoving mountain against which the storm breaks. He is the raw force of nature. She is the institution, the law, the very concept of divine order. You can feel the immediate shift in the room's atmosphere. The wild, untamed energy of Zeus is suddenly contained, forced into a different shape by her presence. She is the goddess of marriage, a role the Greeks called Gamelia. She is the protector of married women, the sanctifier of the wedding vow, the divine force that ensures the legitimacy of heirs and the stability of the home. Her entire portfolio, her divine reason for being, is centered on the sacred, unbreakable bond between husband and wife. And in this lies the core of her tragedy and the fuel for her legendary rage. The goddess of faithful marriage is trapped for eternity in the most famously, flagrantly unfaithful marriage in the history of myth. Imagine spending your immortal existence as the patron of an ideal that your own husband publicly and repeatedly demolishes for sport. It's not just a personal betrayal. It's a direct, professional assault on her divine authority. Every affair Zeus has is a public statement that her domain is meaningless, that the vows sworn to her are worthless. It's like being the god of cybersecurity while your own celestial server has a password of password 123 feet. Her fury, when it comes, is therefore not just the jealousy of a scorned wife. It is the righteous and calculated wrath of a queen whose kingdom is under siege from within. But she is smart. She knows she cannot truly win a direct fight against the raw power of Zeus. Oh, like a masterful politician, she almost never targets him. She wages a terrifying shadow war, and her battlefields are the lives of his lovers and their children. You watch her as she approaches the throne, and in your mind, her greatest hits of vengeance begin to play. You see the Titaness Leto, beautiful and heavily pregnant with Zeus's twins, Apollo and Artemis. Hera, with the cold precision of a celestial lawyer, issues a divine decree. No land that sees the light of the sun may offer Leto a place to rest or give birth. It's a curse of cosmic homelessness. Then, to make matters worse, she unleashes Python, a monstrous serpent born from the mud of the Great Flood, to hunt the desperate Leto across the globe. You can almost feel Leto's exhaustion and terror, her swollen belly a constant reminder of the divine fury she has incurred, as she stumbles from land to land, only to be rejected, shunned by the very earth itself out of fear of Hera's wrath. Finally, she finds the barren, floating rock of Delos, a place not truly anchored to the earth, a loophole in Hera's curse. And there, clinging to a palm tree in agony, she finally gives birth to two of the most powerful and brilliant of the next generation of gods. Hera's plan failed, but not for lack of trying. Then you see the face of Semele, a mortal princess from Thebes, glowing with the bliss of being loved by a god. She is pregnant with the future god Dionysus. Hera sees this, and her approach is one of masterful psychological warfare. She disguises herself as an old, trusted nurse, a familiar face that Semele would never doubt. She sits with the girl and plants a simple, poisonous seed of doubt. "My dear," the disguised goddess says, her voice full of false concern, "are you sure he is who he says he is? Men make all sorts of grand claims. If he is truly Zeus, the king of all, ask him to show you his true, divine form. It's the only way to be sure." Semele, young and insecure, falls for the trap. Later, basking in Zeus's affection, she makes him swear an unbreakable oath on the river Styx to grant her one wish. He agrees instantly, blinded by his love. And then she asks him to reveal himself in all his glory. You see the horror dawn on Zeus's face. He knows what will happen. A mortal body cannot withstand the full, unfiltered presence of a god. He pleads with her to ask for anything else, but she insists. Bound by the most sacred of oaths, he has no choice. He appears before her, not as a man, but as a being of pure, concentrated lightning and thunder. The sight is too much. Semele is instantly and utterly incinerated, turned to ash by the very glory she asked to witness. A perfect, tragic execution engineered by Hera without ever laying a hand on the girl. Perhaps her most prolonged and cruel campaign was waged against Io, one of her own priestesses in Argos. Zeus, in a moment of supreme poor judgment, seduced the girl within the sacred confines of Hera's own temple. To hide his transgression as Hera approached, he quickly transformed Io into a beautiful white heifer. Hera arrives, sees the nervous-looking Zeus and the strikingly beautiful cow, and immediately understands. With a smile as thin and sharp as a shard of ice, she says, "Oh, what a lovely creature, my dear husband. A wonderful cow. Surely, as a gift, you will give her to me." Zeus is caught. To refuse would be to admit guilt. He is forced to hand over his lover, now trapped in the body of an animal, to his furious wife. Hera's revenge is a slow, grinding torment. She assigns her most effective security guard to the task, Argus Panoptes, a giant with 100 eyes distributed all over his body. At any given time, only 2 eyes would sleep, while the other 98 remained wide awake and vigilant. He tethers the poor heifer and watches her day and night. The story of how Hermes eventually lulls all 100 eyes to sleep and slays the giant is a tale for another time. But even Argus's death doesn't end Io's suffering. In a final act of cruelty, Hera takes the giant's eyes and places them on the tail of her favorite bird, the peacock, as a permanent memorial. Then she sends a relentless, maddening gadfly to sting and pursue the heifer Io forever. You can see the poor creature, driven mad by the constant pain, running across continents, fording seas, with no hope of rest, a prisoner in her own body, tormented by an invisible, inescapable pest. It's like the worst social media stalker you can possibly imagine, given insect form and a divine mandate to torture you for eternity. This brings you to her ultimate nemesis, the living embodiment of Zeus's infidelity, the hero whose very name is a piece of cosmic sarcasm, Heracles. The name in Greek means glory of Hera. It is a name steeped in irony, because from the moment of his conception, Hera's sole focus was his utter destruction. Her persecution began before he was even born. As his mother, Alcmene, went into labor, Hera sent Eileithyia, the goddess of childbirth, and her own daughter, to stop the birth. Eileithyia sat at the door, her legs crossed and her hands clenched, magically sealing the womb and causing Alcmene excruciating pain. The birth was only successful because a clever servant tricked the goddess into uncrossing her legs, breaking the spell. Hera's next attempt was more direct. While the infant Heracles lay in his crib, she sent 2 enormous serpents to poison and strangle him. But this was no ordinary baby. The demigod child awoke, not with a cry of fear, but with a gurgle of delight, and grabbing a snake in each of his tiny, supernaturally strong fists, he gleefully throttled them both. But Hera's most devastating attack was not on his body, but on his mind. Years later, when Heracles was a grown man, a happy husband and father, Hera inflicted upon him a sudden, terrifying madness. In his delirium, he saw his own wife and children as enemies and slaughtered them. When the madness lifted and he saw what he had done, he was shattered by grief and guilt. It was this horrific, Hera-induced tragedy that forced him to seek purification, leading him to the oracle at Delphi and the sentence of his famous 12 labors. The ultimate irony is that Hera, in her relentless quest to destroy Heracles, was the direct cause of his immortal fame. She created the trials that proved his greatness. She is the architect of the glory she so despised. Hera's power was not just a reflection of her husband's. She was a major deity in her own right, worshipped long before many of the other Olympians rose to prominence. This is a key historical point. Her temple on the island of Samos, the Herion, was one of the largest and most revered sanctuaries in all of Greece. A truly colossal structure that underwent multiple rebuilds, each grander than the last. It rivaled and, at times, surpassed the magnificence of Zeus's own temples. This wasn't the shrine of a secondary consort. It was the center of a powerful, ancient cult. This has led to a fascinating scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether Hera's character was originally that of a powerful, pre-Hellenic mother goddess, a queen of the heavens in her own right, whose independent worship was later subjugated and reframed into the role of a jealous wife with the rise of the patriarchal Olympian pantheon. Her rage, in this light, isn't just marital jealousy, but the fury of a deposed queen forced into a subordinate role. Even her courtship with Zeus was founded on a trick, a quirky tidbit that sets the stage for their entire relationship. Knowing Hera was reluctant to marry him, Zeus used his cunning. He transformed himself into a tiny, bedraggled cuckoo, shivering and caught in a thunderstorm he himself had created. Hera, the protector of all creatures, saw the distressed little bird and, taking pity on it, held it to her breast to warm it. The moment she did, Zeus transformed back to his divine self and seized her, violating her before their marriage even began. Their union was consecrated by an act of deception, forever tainting the sacred institution she was meant to embody. But it would be a mistake to see her as only a vengeful monster. She has another side. She is a fierce protector of the heroes who honor her domain. She was the divine patron of Jason and his Argonauts, guiding them through treacherous waters, precisely because their quest was tied to reclaiming a legitimate throne. She is a queen, and she protects the order of legitimate succession. And she is a mother. Her relationships with her legitimate children, Ares, Hephaestus, Hebe, and Eileithyia, are complicated and often fraught with the same tension that defines her marriage. But they are hers. They are the legitimate heirs to the cosmos, not the bastard offspring of Zeus's fleeting whims. You look at her again, standing before the throne, a silent, powerful challenge to the king. You see the complexity in her gaze. You see the deep, unending pain of betrayal. But beneath it, an iron will. You understand that you would absolutely want her as your lawyer in a cosmic divorce proceeding. But you would never, ever want to be the other woman. Her methods are terrifying, her vengeance catastrophic. But from her perspective, they are the necessary actions of a queen defending her borders. She is upholding the law in a lawless household, maintaining the sanctity of the institution that holds their entire society together. A silent communication passes between the divine couple. A look. It's a look that contains millennia of shared history, of love, betrayal, and bitter resentment. No words are needed. Then, with a final, almost imperceptible nod, Hera turns. She glides out of the throne room as serenely as she entered, her regal presence lingering like a cool draft. The air she leaves behind is filled with an unspoken truth, that the greatest threat to the stability of the cosmos isn't a rampaging monster or a rival god. It's the quiet, simmering, and eternally patient fury of a queen who has been wronged once too often. And as she disappears, you are left to ponder the vast, tragic, and often fatal collateral damage of a divine domestic dispute. The chill left by Hera's departure seems to cling to the marble of the throne room, a silent testament to a conflict that will never end. The oppressive grandeur of Olympus feels suddenly suffocating, a beautiful prison of endless feuds. You feel a pull, a desire for open space, for air that doesn't hum with tension. The glittering, star-dusted floor beneath you seems to dissolve, the golden columns fade like mist, and the scent of lilies is washed away by a sudden, sharp sting of salt. You are no longer on the mountain. You are standing on a sun-drenched cliff, the rugged rock warm beneath your feet. Before you, stretching to the horizon, is the sea. This is the Aegean, and it is a living thing. It breathes. You hear the slow, rhythmic sigh as the waves roll in and the crashing exhale as they shatter against the rocks below, sending a fine, cool mist up to greet you. The water is a dozen shades of blue and green, from the pale turquoise of the shallows to the deep, intimidating navy of the depths. The sun glints off its surface, a million fractured diamonds of light dancing and shifting with every movement. The sea is beautiful, yes, but it is a beauty with an edge. It is a vast, untamable wilderness whose serene surface hides a world of crushing pressure, strange creatures, and a power so immense it could swallow the land without a thought. The sea is a perfect mirror of its king, and there he is. He doesn't arrive in a chariot or walk from a temple. He rises from the churning water at the base of the cliff, as if the sea itself has decided to take on human form. He is immense, with a build and a thick, flowing beard that rival his brother Zeus. But where Zeus is the king in his court, this god is the wild outdoors. His dark hair is longer, tangled with strands of seaweed and tiny, shimmering pearls. His skin is bronzed, weathered by an eternity of wind and saltwater sun. His eyes are not the stormy gray of the sky, but the shifting, mesmerizing teal of the deep ocean, holding both profound calm and the promise of violent storms. In his hand, he grips his symbol of power, the trident. It's not just a three-pronged spear. It is a conduit for his very essence. It is a divine tuning fork that can command the elements. When he strikes the land, the ground groans and splits apart, toppling cities and creating chasms. They call him Enisigaios, the earth shaker. When he strikes the sea, the waves heave and swell, rising into monstrous walls of water that can scour coastlines clean. This is Poseidon, ruler of the oceans, lord of the earthquake, and master of horses. He is one of the big three, one of the original brothers who drew lots for the world. But he didn't get the sky, and he didn't get the underworld. He got the bit in the middle, the vast, restless, horizontal kingdom that touches every shore but is home to none. You can sense in his bearing a touch of divine middle child syndrome. He has all the power and pride of his brothers, but not the supreme authority of Zeus. This makes him perpetually restless, a god with a colossal chip on his shoulder, always eager to prove his strength and demand the respect he feels he is owed. A minor deity forgetting to offer him the best cut of a sacrifice could result in a tsunami. He's charismatic, yes, but dangerously moody. His anger isn't the calculated, legalistic wrath of Hera. It is a primal, elemental tantrum. His patronage of horses seems, at first, like a strange addition to his portfolio. God of the sea and horses? But when you see him, you understand. He created the first horse by striking a rock with his trident, and out sprang a creature that was the perfect land-based reflection of the sea. Beautiful, powerful, swift, and with a wild, untamable spirit. The pounding of a horse's hooves on the plains is the echo of the waves crashing on the shore. They are both forces of nature that man can try to tame, but never truly control. Poseidon's pride makes him a god of legendary grudges. He does not forgive, and he never forgets. His most famous feud was the contest for the city of Athens. Both he and his niece, Athena, wanted to be the patron deity of the magnificent new city rising on the Attic plain. The gods decreed a contest. Whoever could give the city the better gift would win its devotion. Poseidon went first. With the dramatic flair of a god who loves a grand gesture, he strode to the center of the Acropolis and struck the rock with his trident. Immediately, a spring of water burst forth. It was a show of immense power, the ability to command water from stone. But the people tasted it, and it was salt water. As impressive as it was ultimately useless. Then came Athena. She didn't put on a show. She quietly knelt, planted a small seed in the earth, and from it grew the world's first olive tree. Her gift was one of civilization itself. Food from the olives, oil for lamps and for cooking, and wood for building. The choice was obvious. The people of Athens, or in some versions the other gods, chose Athena's subtle, life-giving gift over Poseidon's brash, useless one. He did not take it well. There was no gracious concession speech. Instead, he flew into a rage and unleashed a massive flood upon the plain, a curse of salt water that plagued the region for years. He would remain a bitter rival of Athens for centuries, a testament to his monumental inability to handle rejection. This pattern of being slighted and seeking disproportionate revenge is a recurring theme. You see him standing alongside his nephew, Apollo, before the walls of Troy. They had agreed to serve the Trojan king, Laomedon, for a year, with Poseidon building the city's impenetrable walls and Apollo tending the king's flocks. When the year was up and the magnificent walls stood complete, the foolish king refused to pay them their promised wages. Apollo's anger was significant, but Poseidon's was volcanic. He harbored a deep, festering hatred for the entire city of Troy. Generations later, during the Trojan War, that grudge was still burning. He relentlessly and passionately sided with the Greeks, using his power to batter the Trojans, all because their long-dead king had cheated him out of a fee. He is the celestial equivalent of a contractor who, after being stiffed on a job, spends the next decade plotting the complete and utter ruin of the client's entire family line. But perhaps his most famous, most personal grudge was against one single mortal, the clever king of Ithaca, Odysseus. The cause was simple and direct. Odysseus and his crew, trapped in the cave of the Cyclops Polyphemus, managed to blind the one-eyed giant to escape. The problem? Polyphemus was Poseidon's son. The escape would have been perfect, but Odysseus, in a moment of fatal pride, couldn't resist shouting his real name back to the shore as he sailed away. That gave the blinded, raging Cyclops a name to scream to his father. And Poseidon heard him. For the next 10 years, Poseidon made Odysseus's life a living hell. He didn't always try to kill him outright. That would be too simple. Instead, he became the divine agent of misery, the cosmic tormentor who ensured Odysseus would never find his way home. He sent storms to smash his ships, stirred up monsters to devour his men, and used his influence to strand him on forgotten islands. It was a relentless, deeply personal vendetta. He's the kind of god who won't just key your car. He'll make sure you get a flat tire every day for a year, that your GPS always leads you into traffic, and that every song on the radio is one you despise, all because you wronged his child. While his domain is the sea, his title of Earthshaker has always been a point of fascination. Why would a sea god be in charge of earthquakes? This has led to an interesting debate. Historians still argue whether Poseidon was originally a chthonic, earth-based fertility god from inland cultures, whose identity was later merged with a pre-existing Aegean sea god as Greek peoples expanded toward the coast. This theory would elegantly explain his strange, dual portfolio. His ancient connection to horses, which are land animals, and his fundamental power over the trembling earth point to a terrestrial origin that was later adapted to a new maritime world. His love life, much like Zeus's, was extensive, but often lacked his brother's cunning disguises, relying more on persistence and force. His queen is the beautiful Nereid, Aphrodite. Initially, she was terrified of the boisterous, powerful god and fled from his advances, hiding in the deepest parts of the ocean. Poseidon sent dolphins, the gentle messengers of the sea, to find her and persuade her to return as his queen. Their marriage seems far more stable than the celestial drama on Olympus, but it didn't keep Poseidon from pursuing others. One of the strangest and most unsettling of these pursuits was aimed at his own sister, Demeter, while she was wandering the earth, grieving for her lost daughter Persephone. Poseidon hounded her. To escape him, she transformed herself into a mare and hid among a herd of horses. Not one to be deterred, Poseidon simply transformed himself into a stallion and had his way with her. This deeply problematic union produced two offspring, a daughter whose name was so sacred it was forbidden to be spoken aloud, and a magical, talking horse named Arion who could run like the wind. It's a bizarre and disturbing story that highlights the raw, often brutal, nature of divine desire. His children, like his own personality, are a mix of the heroic and the monstrous. He is sometimes named as the father of the great hero Theseus, who slew the Minotaur, but he also fathered terrifying giants, one-eyed Cyclops, and his son and herald, Triton, who is half man, half fish, and blows a twisted conch shell to announce his father's arrival. His lineage is as wild and unpredictable as the sea itself. You watch as the great god of the sea takes a final look at the shore, at the world of land and men. Then, with the grace of a creature in its natural element, he dives. The sea opens up to receive him, and he vanishes into the green depths, the water closing over his head without so much as a ripple. The waves seemed gentler now, the ocean's mood calmed by its king's return. The setting sun paints the surface in streaks of orange and deep purple. But you know that this tranquility is deceptive. Beneath that beautiful, placid surface, an immense and volatile power rests, dreaming its deep water dreams. You understand why every sailor who ever lived treated the sea with a mixture of love and terror. It is the source of life, of trade, of connection. But it can turn on you in a heartbeat, its mood shifting with the unpredictable whims of its king. You'd love to have Poseidon at a party. His stories would be incredible. But you would also count the silverware, check your homeowner's insurance, and make sure he didn't park his chariot in your driveway. As the sound of the gentle surf lulls you, you feel yourself being pulled away from the coast, turning inland and sinking down, toward the third and final kingdom of the three great brothers. The gentle rocking of the sea fades away, and the sound of the waves is the first thing to go. You are sinking, drifting downwards, away from the sunlit world of Poseidon. The light vanishes next, not suddenly, but as if it's being slowly absorbed by a profound and ancient darkness. The air, once cool and moist with sea spray, becomes perfectly still, cool, and dry. The clean scent of salt is replaced by something else. The smell of deep earth, of cold, damp stone, and of dust that has not been disturbed for millennia. There is no wind, no weather, no life. There is only the great, silent, waiting dark. You are on the path to the third and final kingdom, the one that inevitably claims everyone. You are no longer you. Not really. You are a shade, a pale and flickering echo of your former self, your substance thinning into mist. You drift with countless others, a silent procession of recent arrivals, all being pulled towards the flat, black ribbon of a river that cuts through the gloom. This is the Styx, the river of unbreakable oaths, and its waters are as slow and quiet as spilled ink. On the near bank, a figure waits, leaning on a long pole in a battered skiff. This is Charon, the ferryman of the dead. He is ancient beyond reckoning, his skin like worn leather stretched over a frame of bone. His eyes are hollow sockets that don't see you, the individual, but only assess whether you have the toll. This isn't a journey of compassion. It is a business transaction. You remember the custom, a mainstream historical fact so deeply ingrained in the culture of the living that it followed them into death. A small coin, an obol, placed in the mouth of the deceased to pay for this very moment. It was the final, practical preparation for the most impractical journey of all. Those without the fare are doomed to wander the banks for 100 years, ghosts trapped between worlds. You have your coin, you board the skiff, and the journey across is utterly silent. The only sound the soft dip and pull of Charon's pole in the oily, black water. On the far shore, a low growl rumbles through the still air, a sound that vibrates in your very essence. Here waits the guardian of the gate, the most famous guard dog in history, Cerberus. He is every bit as terrifying as the legends say. He is enormous, a beast the size of a bull, with 3 snarling heads, each with teeth like daggers. His mane is a writhing mass of living serpents, hissing and darting. But as you draw closer, you see he is not a mindless monster. He is a security system. His 3 heads watch all angles, his many eyes alert and intelligent. His job is not to menace the incoming souls, but to ensure that none of them ever leave. He is the ultimate bouncer, brutally efficient, easy to get past him on the way in, impossible to get past him on the way out. There's no re-entry, no sneaking out, not even for a quick ghostly smoke break. He watches you pass with a dispassionate, intimidating glare, and you drift on. You are now in the realm of Hades, the underworld, and it is vital to understand that this place is not the Christian hell. It is not a domain of fire and brimstone reserved for sinners. For the vast majority of souls, it is something far more chilling, a place of eternal, muted, gray neutrality. You find yourself in the asphodel meadows. An endless, colorless plain stretches in every direction, covered in pale, ghostly asphodel flowers. The air is filled with a constant, rustling whisper, the sound of countless shades flitting about like bats in the gloom. They are the ghosts of ordinary people, their memories and personalities washed away by the waters of the river Lethe, the river of forgetfulness. They don't suffer, they simply exist, a silent, whispering eternity of boredom. This gray, orderly, and melancholic kingdom is a perfect reflection of its king. At the center of the realm, in a vast, dark palace with halls of polished obsidian, sits Hades on his throne of ebony. He is not a red-skinned devil with horns and a pitchfork. That is a later, different mythology. He is a god, a king, looking much like his brothers Zeus and Poseidon. Majestic, powerful, with a dark, flowing beard. But where Zeus crackles with energy and Poseidon churns with emotion, Hades radiates a profound stillness. He is somber, quiet, and his eyes hold not malice, but the immense, weary weight of his responsibility. He is not evil. He is a divine civil servant, an overworked manager whose sole job is to process and contain every soul that has ever lived. The modern world has thoroughly confused Hades, the god, with the Christian concept of Satan. But Hades is not a tempter, not a rebel, not the source of cosmic evil. He is a king who got the worst of the three kingdoms when the lots were cast, and he has dutifully, if grimly, ruled it ever since. He almost never meddles in the affairs of mortals. He rarely leaves his realm, and his defining characteristic is a rigid, almost obsessive adherence to the rules. The first rule of the underworld is, the dead stay dead. He is less of an evil overlord and more of a divine tax agent. He doesn't care about your moral failings. He just cares that you have been processed correctly and that you stay in your designated precinct for all eternity. His kingdom is, however, a place of justice with different regions for different souls. You've seen the Asphodel Meadows, the default destination for the average person. But for the truly heroic, the righteous, and the demigods favored by the gods, there is Elysium, the Elysian Fields. It is the exception to the gloom, a paradise where the grass is always green, a soft, pleasant light always shines, and the heroes spend their afterlife in pleasant pursuits. Then there is the other extreme, Tartarus. This is the true hell of the Greek cosmos. It is a deep, inescapable pit, as far below the earth as the earth is below the sky, used as a prison for the greatest enemies of the gods. The vanquished titans are imprisoned here, and for mortals whose crimes were so audacious they earned eternal punishment. Here you would find the shade of Tantalus, forever standing in a pool of water he can never drink, under a fruit tree whose bounty he can never reach. His name giving us the word tantalize. Here too is Sisyphus, the clever king who cheated death twice. His punishment is to eternally roll a massive boulder up a steep hill, only to have it roll back down each time he nears the summit, forcing him to begin his meaningless, agonizing labor anew. These punishments are reserved for those who committed crimes of hubris, a direct defiance against the gods themselves. Hades, for all his power, has only one major myth that truly defines him. One story where he dramatically impacts the world above, the abduction of his queen, Persephone. You see it unfold in your mind's eye. Hades, in his dark and lonely kingdom, sees the beautiful goddess of spring, Persephone, daughter of Zeus and Demeter, gathering flowers in a sunlit meadow. He is instantly captivated, but he does not woo her with clever disguises like Zeus. He is a god of direct, unsubtle action. The earth splits open with a terrifying groan, and he emerges from the chasm in a chariot drawn by 4 black horses. He snatches the screaming goddess and descends with her back into his realm, the earth closing seamlessly behind them. This act plunges the world into chaos, as Persephone's mother, the harvest goddess Demeter, wanders the earth in a grief so profound that she forbids any plant from growing. The seasons halt, and humanity faces extinction. Eventually, Zeus is forced to intervene. He brokers a deal. Persephone can return to her mother on one condition. She must not have consumed any food or drink in the underworld. Hades, a master of his own rules, knows this. Just before she is to be released, he offers his young, frightened queen a single, glistening pomegranate seed. Whether out of hunger, pity, or simple trickery, she eats it. This tiny act has permanent consequences. The pomegranate was a potent symbol, its wealth of seeds hidden within a tough rind representing both fertility and the unbreakable finality of death. By eating it, Persephone symbolically consummated her marriage and bound herself to the underworld. She now has to spend a portion of the year, the winter months, when the earth is barren, as the queen of the underworld, beside her husband. This myth is central to Greek belief, and historians still argue whether the story of Persephone's abduction represents the violent subjugation of a vibrant agricultural cult by a gloomier death cult, or if it's a sophisticated allegory for the agricultural cycle, explaining how life, spring, must retreat into the earth, the underworld, to be reborn each year. What is most remarkable is what happens after this violent beginning. The marriage of Hades and Persephone becomes the most stable, faithful, and functional relationship in the entire Olympian pantheon. He adores her, and she, in time, comes to be a formidable and respected queen in her own right, tempering his grim judgment with her wisdom. Unlike his brothers, Hades has virtually no other affairs. He is a devoted, if somber, husband. He is also known by another name, Pluton, the rich one, which gives us our word, plutocrat. This isn't because he hoards treasure, but because all the precious metals and minerals of the earth, gold, silver, gems, are found within his domain. He is the wealthiest of the gods, but also the one least interested in the glitter of his possessions. So you see him now, the god everyone fears, the one whose name mortals avoided speaking aloud, preferring euphemisms like the unseen one. But you realize the fear is not of him, but of what he represents, the inescapable reality of death. He didn't draw the short straw and complain. He accepted his grim kingdom and has managed it with solemn efficiency for all time. He is the great gatekeeper. He doesn't make the rules of life and death, but he will enforce them with the full, unwavering weight of his office if you try to break them. You see him on his ebony throne, and perhaps beside him, you see the vision of his queen, Persephone, a single splash of life and color in the endless gray. He does not look evil. He looks tired, burdened with the weight of every soul that has ever crossed the Styx. There is a deep melancholy about him, the sorrow of a king who rules a kingdom where no one wants to live, and from which no one can ever leave. A gentle, irresistible current begins to pull you, the shade, away from the throne room, out towards the whispering fields of asphodel. Your brief moment of consciousness, of memory, is fading. You are joining the murmur of the endless dead, your identity dissolving like smoke to wait for nothing, forever. The journey through the realms of the three great brothers is over, and the stage is set for the rise of a new, vibrant, and even more chaotic generation of gods who live in the full light of the sun. The gray, whispering gloom of the underworld dissolves. The endless, rustling plains of asphodel fade to nothing, and you are pulled upwards out of the silent dark and into a blinding, brilliant light. The ascent is dizzying, a rush of air and energy, and you find yourself back on the peak of Mount Olympus. But there is no peace here. The very foundations of the celestial mountain are shaking, not from an earthquake, but from the raw, agonized roars of its king. Zeus is clutching his head, suffering from a headache of such cosmic intensity that it threatens to shatter reality itself. The other gods stand back, helpless and afraid. His pain is a palpable force, a storm front of pure misery. In his torment, he bellows for Hephaestus, the master craftsman. The order is simple and insane. Take your axe, the king groans, and split my head open. Hephaestus, ever the dutiful, if reluctant, son, brings a heavy bronze wedge and his mightiest hammer. With a deep breath, he strikes. The sound is like the cracking of a glacier. And from the skull of the king of the gods, something incredible happens. There is no blood, no gore. Instead, a figure emerges, springing forth not as a helpless infant, but as a fully grown, fully armed woman. This is Athena. She is tall and formidable, her form encased in gleaming, master-crafted armor. In one hand, she holds a long, perfectly balanced spear. In the other, a shield emblazoned with the terrifying face of a Gorgon. Her eyes are a startling, intelligent gray, calm and assessing even in the midst of her own explosive birth. She raises her head and lets out a triumphant, piercing war cry, a sound of such clarity and power that it echoes across the heavens, the earth, and the sea below. She has arrived. Her birth is the key to her entire being. The backstory is a classic case of Zeus's paranoia. He had been with the Titaness Medes, whose name means cunning wisdom, but a prophecy warned that the son she bore him would one day overthrow him. So, Zeus did what he always did with inconvenient truths. He swallowed her whole. He thought he had consumed the problem, but he had only internalized it. He couldn't digest divine wisdom. Instead, Medes' child grew within him, gestating not in a womb, but in his mind. Athena is therefore born directly from the intellect of the king of the gods, inheriting her mother's profound wisdom and her father's royal power. She had no childhood, no infancy, no awkward teenage years. She emerged fully formed and ready for business. It is, without a doubt, the most extreme case of "I have a splitting headache" in recorded history. Because she is born of the mind, her entire existence is governed by intellect. She is a stark contrast to the gods you have met so far. Where Zeus rules by raw power and Hera by rigid tradition, where Poseidon is a creature of tempestuous emotion and Hades a somber bureaucrat, Athena is a being of pure, dispassionate reason. She does not throw tantrums. She forms strategies. She does not act on whims. She makes calculated decisions. Her calm is not the deceptive tranquility of the sea or the weary stillness of the underworld. It is the focused calm of a grandmaster playing a cosmic game of chess, thinking 10 moves ahead of everyone else. She is a goddess of war, yes, but she is the absolute antithesis of her half-brother, Ares. His name will soon come to be synonymous with the bloodlust, the chaos, and the brutal, mindless frenzy of battle. Athena, known by the epithet promachos, or The one who fights in front represents the other side of war, the strategy, the discipline, the tactics. She is the patron of the just war, the battle fought for a noble cause, to defend the city, to uphold justice. Ares is the berserker screaming on the front lines. Athena is the brilliant general on the hill, calmly directing her forces to a clean and decisive victory. Yet, her domain extends far beyond the battlefield. She is also Ergain, the worker, the divine patron of crafts and civilization-building arts. She is the goddess of the potter at their wheel, the sculptor with their chisel, and most famously, the weaver at their loom. She represents the intelligence, skill, and patience required to create things of beauty and utility. This is a vital part of her character. Her wisdom is not just abstract philosophical thought. It is practical, applicable knowledge that builds cities and enriches human life. Remember her contest with Poseidon for Athens? His gift of a useless saltwater spring was a flex of raw, untamed power. Her gift of the olive tree was a masterstroke of foresight. It provided food, fuel for lamps, fragrant oil for cleansing, and wood for building. He offered a miracle. She offered an entire industry. Her wisdom makes her a formidable opponent, and her darker side emerges when that wisdom is challenged by mortal arrogance. The most famous cautionary tale is that of Arachne, a young weaver from Lydia. Arachne's skill was supernatural. Her fingers flew across the loom, creating images so lifelike they seemed to breathe. But her talent was matched only by her pride. She openly boasted that she was a better weaver than Athena herself. The goddess, ever one for giving a fair warning, appeared to Arachne disguised as a bent and wrinkled old woman. She gently advised the girl to be content with being the best among mortals and to ask for the goddess's forgiveness. Arachne just laughed and told the old woman to save her advice for her own daughters. "Let the goddess come and try me herself," she declared. The disguise dissolved, and the contest began. Their two looms were set up, and the divine showdown commenced. Athena wove a magnificent tapestry depicting the glory of Olympus. At its center was her contest with Poseidon for Athens. In the four corners, she depicted the terrible fates of mortals who had dared to challenge the gods. Stark, clear warnings. But Arachne's work was, impossibly, just as brilliant. Her tapestry was a technical masterpiece, but its subject matter was a stunning act of defiance. She wove a series of scenes depicting the gods, especially Zeus, in their most shameful and undignified moments, their many affairs and deceptions. It was an exposé of divine hypocrisy, flawlessly executed. Athena was enraged, not because she had been matched in skill. Some say Arachne was even better, but because of the sheer, blasphemous impiety of the work. She ripped Arachne's tapestry to shreds and struck the girl on the forehead. The touch of the goddess filled Arachne with such shame and guilt that she tried to hang herself. But Athena, in a final act of cruel mercy, transformed the rope into a cobweb and Arachne herself into the world's first spider. Her and her descendants doomed to weave their intricate traps for all time, a permanent reminder of the danger of hubris. While she could be merciless to the arrogant, Athena was the greatest ally a clever and respectful mortal could have. She was the divine mentor, the ultimate life coach who, instead of just offering inspirational quotes, provides tactical strategies and magical equipment. She actively guides her chosen heroes, not for her own amusement, but because she sees in them the sparks of wisdom and courage she values. She gave Perseus his polished bronze shield, which he used as a mirror to avoid Medusa's petrifying gaze. She frequently appeared to Heracles during his labors, offering the key piece of advice or the clever stratagem he needed to defeat an impossible beast. But her greatest protege, her masterpiece, was Odysseus, the crafty king of Ithaca. They were kindred spirits. In a world of brute force heroes like Achilles, Odysseus survived and triumphed through his mind, his cunning, and his endurance. The Greeks had a word for this type of intelligence, medi, a blend of wisdom and cunning. Athena and Odysseus both possessed it in abundance. Throughout his 10-year struggle to return home after the Trojan War, she was his constant advocate on Olympus and his secret guide on earth. She would appear to him and his son, Telemachus, disguised as an old family friend named Mentor, giving us the very word we use today to offer crucial advice. Theirs was a unique relationship, one built on mutual intellectual admiration. Her primary place of worship, the jewel of Athens, was the magnificent temple on the Acropolis, the Parthenon. The name itself comes from one of her most important epithets, Athena Parthenos, which means Athena the Virgin. The temple was a testament to the power and glory of the city she protected. Inside stood another colossal masterpiece by the sculptor Phidias, a nearly 40-foot-tall statue of her, crafted from a core of wood covered in plates of ivory for her skin and over a ton of pure gold for her armor and robes. Her sacred animal was the little owl, a bird whose wide, unblinking eyes gave it an air of profound thought. Ancient Athenian silver coins, famous throughout the Mediterranean world, were stamped with her portrait on one side and an owl on the other. These coins were nicknamed owls, and they became a symbol of the city's wealth and wisdom. Her status as a virgin goddess is central to her character. Along with her half-sister Artemis and her aunt Hestia, she is one of 3 great goddesses who remained immune to the romantic entanglements, affairs, and chaotic domestic dramas that so defined the other Olympians. She never married, never had consorts, never had children. While the other gods were busy swiping right on mortals and causing galaxy-class scandals, Athena was inventing the chariot, perfecting the potter's wheel, and establishing the first law courts. She had priorities. This independence was a source of her power. Historians still argue whether Athena's virginity was a symbol of her spiritual purity and self-sufficiency, or if it was a political statement, ensuring she remained independent and unallied by marriage, her power and loyalty belonging only to her father, Zeus, and her chosen city, Athens. Free from distraction, her formidable intellect was focused entirely on her domains: war, wisdom, and the flourishing of civilization. You see her now, standing on Olympus, a serene and powerful presence amid the volatile egos of her divine family. She is the force of cool reason in a world governed by passion and impulse. She is the architect of victory and the patron of progress. You understand that while her father holds the lightning and her uncle commands the seas, it is Athena's sharp, strategic mind that truly shapes the destiny of both mortals and gods. She is the unshakable proof that true, lasting power isn't just about the strength of your thunderbolt. It's about having the wisdom to know exactly where, when, and why to aim it. As her clear, gray eyes gaze out upon the world, they see not just what is, but what could be, with a well-thought-out plan. And it is this calm, calculating intelligence that makes the sheer, bloody-minded chaos of her brother, Ares, seem all the more terrifying. The calm, clear atmosphere of Athena's wisdom feels 1,000 miles away. That cool, calculating presence dissolves, shattered by a rising clamor. The air on Olympus changes. It grows hot, thick, and carries the sharp, coppery tang of fresh blood and the heated metal smell of 1,000 swords being forged at once. The imagined, thoughtful silence of a library is replaced by the raw, visceral sound of a battlefield. You hear the rhythmic clang of bronze shields, the guttural roars of men consumed by rage, and the high, thin screams of the dying. You are leaving the strategic map room and being plunged directly into the bloody mud of the front lines. He doesn't enter with the thoughtful grace of Athena or the regal glide of Hera. He storms into your perception, a being of pure, aggressive physicality. This is Ares. He is handsome, but in a brutish, intimidating way, all sharp angles and coiled muscle. He is encased in polished bronze armor. But unlike Athena's, which seems almost ceremonial in its perfection, his is scuffed, dented, and stained from constant, brutal use. He radiates a restless, menacing energy, constantly shifting his weight, his hand never far from the hilt of his sword. He is a caged panther, and the world is his cage. He is the god of war, but let's be very specific about what that means. He is the god of the ugly truth of war, the bloodlust, the blind rage, the chaotic, indiscriminate slaughter. He is the personification of that moment in battle when all strategy collapses, and all that's left is the animalistic joy of killing. He never travels alone. His entourage is as terrifying as he is. With him ride his sons in attendance, Phobos, whose name means fear, and Deimos, whose name means terror. They are the chilling psychological effects of battle given form. Also with him is his sister and companion, Eris, the goddess of strife, who delights in throwing the golden apple of discord into any situation just to watch it burn. Ares doesn't just bring war, he brings a whole psychological trauma unit with him. What is most striking about Ares is how utterly disliked he is. He is an Olympian prince, the legitimate son of Zeus and Hera, yet he is treated with near universal contempt. His own father, Zeus, makes his feelings perfectly clear in the Iliad, telling Ares to his face, "To me you are the most hateful of all the gods who hold Olympus. Forever strife is dear to you, and wars and fighting." Imagine being so obnoxious that the king of a pantheon defined by dysfunctional behavior singles you out as the worst of the lot. He is a divine bully, impulsive and tactless, driven by a constant, simmering rage that boils over at the slightest provocation. When he joins a battle, he doesn't care about the cause, the politics, or the ultimate outcome. He cares only for the visceral thrill of combat. He's known to switch sides mid-battle if he thinks the other army is fighting with more gusto. He's the divine equivalent of the guy who starts a massive bar fight for no reason, gets spectacularly knocked out, and then complains loudly to anyone who will listen about how unfair it all was. The Trojan War is the perfect showcase for his character, especially when contrasted with Athena. While Athena, the strategist, coolly supports her chosen champions, the Greeks, Ares is swayed by the whims of his lover, Aphrodite, to fight for the Trojans. He doesn't offer them brilliant tactics. He just wades into the fray, a whirlwind of bronze and fury. His most humiliating moment comes at the hands of a mortal, the Greek hero Diomedes. Athena, wanting to put her brother in his place, imbues Diomedes with godlike strength and courage, and guides his spear. The mortal hero thrusts forward and wounds the god of war himself. Ares' reaction is not one of stoic defiance. He bellows. The poet Homer says he roared with the sound of 10,000 mortal men crying out in pain. He drops his weapons, and a dark cloud envelops him as he flees the battlefield, streaking back to Olympus like a wounded child. He immediately finds Zeus and complains bitterly, showing his father the immortal blood, the ichor, flowing from his wound. Zeus's reply is laced with contempt, essentially telling him to stop whining, that he got what he deserved, and that if he weren't his own son, he would have been thrown into Tartarus long ago. It is a moment of supreme disgrace. The god of war, injured by a mortal, running home to his father for sympathy and receiving none. Yet, for all his bluster and unpopularity, he is deeply woven into the fabric of the Greek world. One of the most important cities, Thebes, owes its very existence to him. The myth begins when the hero Cadmus is searching for his sister, Europa, the same princess Zeus, as a white bull, had carried away. Cadmus slays a monstrous water dragon that was guarding a sacred spring. What he didn't know was that the dragon was a child of Ares. On Athena's advice, Cadmus pulls the dragon's teeth and sows them in the fertile earth. Immediately, the ground churns, and fully armed, terrifying warriors, the Spartois or sown men, spring from the furrows. Born of violence, their only instinct is violence. They immediately turn on each other in a chaotic battle royale until only 5 are left standing. These 5 survivors help Cadmus found the city of Thebes and become the ancestors of its noble families. The city's very DNA, therefore, comes from violence, a legacy of its unwitting founder's crime against Ares. Ironically, this god of mindless violence also has a direct connection to the establishment of law. In Athens, on a rocky outcrop near the Acropolis, the gods held their first murder trial. The defendant was Ares. He had killed Halorotheus, a son of Poseidon, for assaulting his own daughter, Alcippe. Poseidon, of course, demanded justice. The gods convened a court, and Ares argued his case, claiming he was justified. The verdict came back, and he was acquitted. From that day on, that hill was named the Areopagus, the Hill of Ares, and it became the seat of Athens' most ancient and venerable court, the place where all future trials for homicide would be held. This is a fascinating historical fact. The Areopagus was a real and powerful institution in classical Athens, a council of elders that held great sway over legal and moral matters. Despite his power, Ares is consistently outmaneuvered by the other gods. Athena defeats him with intellect. The mighty Heracles bests him in single combat. The clever craftsman Hephaestus humiliates him with a trap of elegant ingenuity, a story we will come to very soon. Ares is a blunt instrument in a divine world that, for all its chaos, values cunning and strategy. His immense power is undisciplined, making him largely ineffective. This constant lack of respect from his peers only fuels his bitterness and rage, making him even more volatile. The Greeks' general dislike for Ares is telling, especially when you compare him to his Roman counterpart, Mars. The Romans revered Mars. For them, He wasn't just a god of bloody slaughter. He was a stabilizing force, a protector of the Roman state, a guardian of agriculture, and the divine father of their founders, Romulus and Remus. Mars was a pillar of the community, associated with civic virtue and the glory of the empire. Ares was the god of starting a riot. Mars was the god of building an empire and then holding a triumphant parade through it. It really is all about branding. This profound difference in attitude has led to a long-standing scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether the Greeks' disdain for Ares, in stark contrast to their worship of the strategic Athena, reflects a sophisticated cultural anxiety about the chaotic, self-destructive nature of war itself, valuing the disciplined protection of the city-state over the glorification of individual bloodlust. There is also a much darker, more primitive side to the war god's worship. The Greek historian Herodotus described the religious practices of the Scythians, a nomadic people from the Eurasian steppe. He claimed they worshipped a god equivalent to Ares, but they didn't use a statue. Instead, they would construct a massive, sacred mound of brushwood, and on the very top, they would plant an ancient iron sword as a symbol of the god. To this sword idol, they would make gruesome sacrifices of livestock and, chillingly, 1 out of every 100 prisoners of war. This shows a conception of the god of war that is far more abstract and terrifyingly brutal than the petulant, all-too-human bully the Greeks saw in Ares. But there is one area where Ares is not a failure: love. Or, more accurately, lust and passion. His long-standing, passionate affair with Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, is one of the foundational stories of Olympus. The union of love and war is a powerful allegory. It is a tempestuous, irresistible attraction of opposites, and it produces children who are the living embodiment of their parents' domains. You've met Phobos and Deimos, fear and terror, the children of love and war. But they also had a daughter named Harmonia. Her name seems deeply ironic, but it represents that fleeting, fragile peace that can follow a devastating conflict, or the troubled, tense unity that is forged in the crucible of battle. You are standing now on that metaphorical battlefield. The air is thick with the metallic scent of fear and violence. You see Ares, not as a glorious warrior king, but as a force of pure entropy. He is the divine wrecking ball, the rage that undoes all of Athena's meticulous planning, the pointless storm that sinks Poseidon's ships, the tireless engine that feeds the kingdom of Hades. You understand now why the other gods keep their distance. He is the one you would least want to be stuck next to at a celestial dinner party. Unless your idea of pleasant conversation consists of guttural roars and the occasional overturned table. He is pure, unthinking, destructive impulse. And as the heat of his rage begins to cool, you feel a different kind of warmth approaching. A warmth that is not violent, but inviting. A presence so beautiful and so compelling that it can tame even the god of war. The hot, metallic reek of the battlefield begins to fade. The screams of men and the clang of bronze are replaced by a new sound, a gentle, rhythmic lapping of waves upon a sandy shore. The oppressive heat of Ares' rage cools into a soft, inviting warmth, and the air fills with the clean scent of sea foam and the intoxicating perfume of 1,000 blooming roses. You have been pulled from the epicenter of violence and delivered to the birthplace of beauty. You are about to witness an arrival that will change the cosmos forever. This story begins with an act of shocking violence, a callback to the earliest days of the gods. The Titan king, Cronus, takes a flint sickle and attacks his own father, the sky god Uranus, brutally castrating him. He hurls the severed organs into the sea. For a moment, there is only blood and violation. But then, the sea begins to churn. A great white foam, aphras in Greek, gathers on the surface of the water, swirling and growing. And from the center of this impossible, fertile wound, a figure rises. Like Athena, she is not born an infant. She emerges from the waves a fully grown woman, standing serene and perfect upon the iridescent surface of a giant scallop shell. This is Aphrodite. She is nude, her form so exquisitely beautiful that it strikes the world silent. The winds themselves, the gentle zephyrs, hold their breath in awe before softly blowing her towards the shore of the island of Cyprus. As her feet touch the sand, lush green grass and vibrant flowers spring up in her footsteps. She is beauty born from violence, desire born from divine trauma. This profound paradox is the very core of her being. She is the embodiment of creation and the catalyst for utter destruction. She is the goddess of love, beauty, pleasure, and procreation. But to call her the goddess of love is to undersell the sheer force of her power. Her influence is not gentle or romantic. It is a fundamental, irresistible compulsion. When she wishes it, gods and mortals alike are seized by a desire so overwhelming that it eclipses reason, duty, and even fear. This power is concentrated in her most famous possession, the cestus. It's often described as a girdle or a belt, intricately embroidered, and woven into its threads are all her magical enchantments. It contains longing, sweet talk, seductive whispers, and the potent, undeniable force of desire. It's the ultimate accessory. Forget a designer handbag. This thing could make a root canal sound like a romantic getaway. Her power is so absolute that even the perpetually furious Hera borrows the cestus when she needs to rekindle Zeus's desire to get her own way. The Greeks understood her dual nature, often worshipping her in two forms. There was Aphrodite Pandemos, meaning for all the people, who represented the carnal, physical desire that ensures the continuation of the species. And there was Aphrodite Urania, the celestial Aphrodite born from the sea foam, who represented a more spiritual, non-physical concept of love. But whether carnal or celestial, her influence is almost always chaotic. The greatest example of her destructive power begins, as so many catastrophes do, at a wedding. At the marriage of the hero Peleus and the sea nymph Thetis, all the gods were invited except for one, Eris, the goddess of strife. Furious at the snub, Eris crashes the party and throws a solid gold apple onto the table, bearing the simple inscription, "For the fairest." Immediately, a divine argument erupts. Three goddesses lay claim to it. Hera, the regal queen of the gods. Athena, the wise and powerful warrior. And Aphrodite, the embodiment of beauty. Zeus, knowing better than to get involved in this argument, wisely passes the decision to a mortal, a handsome, and conveniently isolated Trojan prince named Paris. The three goddesses appear before him, and the celestial bribery begins. Hera offers him power. He will be the king of all Europe and Asia. Athena offers him wisdom and skill in battle, promising he will be the most victorious of warriors. Then comes Aphrodite, She doesn't offer power or glory. She offers him the one thing a young man is most likely to desire. With a soft, knowing smile, she promises him the love of the most beautiful mortal woman in the entire world, Helen of Sparta. Paris, without much hesitation, awards the golden apple to Aphrodite. It's a choice that seals the fate of millions. That one decision, fueled by desire over power or wisdom, sets in motion the abduction of Helen, the 1,000 ships of the Greeks, and the decade-long, horrifically bloody Trojan War. An entire civilization will be burned to the ground, all for the promise of a pretty face. This explosive potential is what makes her affair with the god of war, Ares, so potent. It is the irresistible, elemental attraction between beauty and brutality, desire and destruction. You can picture them meeting in secret, away from the prying eyes of the other Olympians. He is the only one whose raw, violent passion can match her overwhelming intensity. She is the only one whose soft beauty can soothe his savage nature. They are the hot, chaotic, passionate core of the pantheon, a love affair that feels both deeply wrong and utterly inevitable. Their secret trysts are a source of constant gossip, but for now, they remain a secret from the one person who matters most, her husband. But Aphrodite's heart is not made entirely of mischief and chaos. She is capable of profound, genuine love, and also profound, genuine sorrow. Her most famous tragic romance was with Adonis, a mortal youth of such breathtaking beauty that he captivated the goddess of beauty herself. She was utterly besotted with him, forsaking her usual haunts on Olympus to follow him through the woods as he hunted. She, the goddess of pleasure, took up the life of a huntress just to be near him. She begged him to be careful, to hunt only small, harmless prey like rabbits and deer, and to avoid the dangerous beasts like lions and boars. Adonis, a proud and capable young hunter, laughed off her concerns. One day, while hunting alone, his dogs cornered a massive, ferocious wild boar. Adonis speared the beast, but only wounded it. The enraged boar charged, burying its long, sharp tusks deep in the young man's side. Aphrodite, hearing his cries from her swan-drawn chariot high above, rushed to his side, but it was too late. She held him in her arms as his life bled out onto the forest floor. Her grief was immense and real. Where his blood stained the earth, the beautiful, short-lived anemone flower sprang forth, a flower that, like Adonis, is beautiful but fragile and destined to be swept away by the wind. Some versions of the myth even say the boar was a jealous Ares in disguise, unable to bear seeing her love immortal. The story of Aphrodite and Adonis became the foundation of a popular mystery cult, its rites echoing her sorrow and the hope of his cyclical rebirth. Her worship was some of the most widespread and ancient in the Greek world, predating many of the other Olympians. This has led to a significant scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether Aphrodite is a purely Greek creation or a syncretic deity, heavily influenced by and imported from older, more powerful Near Eastern goddesses of love and war, such as the Phoenician Astarte and the Sumerian Inanna Ishtar. This potential origin would explain her immense power and her occasional, surprising associations with warfare, making her pairing with Ares seem even more historically resonant. Her most important temples were on the islands of Cyprus and Cythera, which both claimed to be her birthplace, and in major port cities like Corinth. A mainstream, if to our minds unsettling, Historical fact is that her worship in these port cities often involved the practice of sacred prostitution. Priestesses, serving the goddess, would offer their bodies to sailors and traders. The act seen not as sordid, but as a form of divine worship, honoring the goddess's domain over procreation and physical love. Her sacred animals were often the dove and the swan, symbols of peace and grace. But she was also strongly associated with the humble sparrow. Poets and artists noted the sparrow's prolific and amorous nature and saw it as a fitting, if slightly less glamorous, symbol of the goddess's primary function. It's a quirky tidbit, but when you think about it, the high energy, constantly in motion, and notoriously promiscuous sparrow is a surprisingly accurate spirit animal for the goddess of getting busy. Of course, Aphrodite's own family life is a mess. By the decree of a vengeful Hera, she was forced into an arranged marriage with Hephaestus, the lame, soot-stained, and deeply unglamorous god of the forge. She despises her husband, seeing him as an embarrassment, and makes no secret of her disdain or her many infidelities. Her most famous child is her son, Eros, better known by his Roman name, Cupid. He is her agent and enforcer, a mischievous boy god armed with a bow and arrows capable of inflicting uncontrollable desire upon anyone they strike. Together, they are a mother-son duo responsible for some of the greatest love stories and most disastrous obsessions in all of mythology. You can see her now, a figure of overwhelming beauty and power. She is not a simple, frivolous deity. She is a fundamental force of nature, as potent and as dangerous as a hurricane or an earthquake. Her influence inspires the procreation that builds cities and the obsessive passions that burn them to the ground. She is the reason for life's most sublime joys and its most devastating sorrows. She is the goddess who could persuade you to launch 1,000 ships, to abandon your throne, or to do something else incredibly foolish. And you would likely thank her for the opportunity as you did it. She smiles, a soft, radiant, and intoxicating expression, but there is a knowing glint in her eyes. She is fully aware of the power she wields and the chaos she can unleash. You feel the heat of her ongoing affair with the god of war, a passion that burns at the very center of Olympus. And you sense that secrets this hot, in a family this volatile, have a way of coming to light in the most spectacular and humiliating ways possible. Especially when the husband you're cheating on happens to be the most brilliant and vengeful craftsman in the entire universe. The intoxicating, rose-scented air of Aphrodite's world begins to thin, and the soft, golden light gives way to a fierce, pulsing orange glow. You are descending, but not into the cold, silent darkness of the underworld. You are going down into the fiery, living heart of a volcano. The gentle lapping of waves is drowned out by a deafening, rhythmic clang, the sound of a great hammer striking an anvil. The sweet perfume of flowers is choked out by the smells of coal smoke, melting bronze, and the sharp tang of superheated air. This is the domain of the god who works. This is the forge of Hephaestus. The chamber is a vast cavern, a place of furious, constant creation. Rivers of molten gold and silver flow in channels carved into the rock floor. The huge leather bellows that feed the fires breathe in and out with the slow, deep sigh of sleeping dragons. Sparks fly like swarms of angry fireflies, and the heat is so intense it warps the very air. And there, standing before a massive anvil, is the master of the forge himself. He is nothing like the other gods you have seen. He is not tall, ethereal, or impossibly perfect. His shoulders and arms are tremendously powerful, corded with the muscle of a lifetime of labor. But he is lame. One of his legs is twisted, and he moves with a pronounced, rolling limp. His face, handsome in its own rugged way, is smudged with soot. His beard is singed at the edges, and his brow is furrowed in the deep concentration of a master artisan completely absorbed in his work. He is the blue-collar god in a white-collar family, the only Olympian who actually has a job. He is the god of fire, but not the wild, destructive fire of a forest blaze. He is the god of the contained, creative fire of the forge. He is the patron of blacksmiths, jewelers, stonemasons, and anyone who creates with their hands. The other gods rule over abstract concepts like love, war, or wisdom. Hephaestus makes the physical objects that define their power. He is the indispensable god, the celestial quartermaster, the divine engineer. And he is an outcast. His origin story is a tragic tale of rejection. In the version told by the poet Homer, he was the son of Zeus and Hera, but he was born with his disability. Hera, the queen obsessed with regal perfection, was so horrified and ashamed by her imperfect child that she did the unthinkable. She threw him from the peak of Mount Olympus. He fell for a full day and a long night, tumbling from the heavens until he crashed into the endless sea. There, he was rescued by the sea nymphs Thetis and Eurynome, who raised him in a secret underwater grotto. It was there, in exile, that he taught himself his craft, forging beautiful jewelry for his adopted mothers, his heart burning with a quiet, simmering resentment. Another version of the tale says he was born to Hera alone, a desperate attempt to one-up Zeus after he produced Athena. But when her child emerged lame, Hera cast him out in a fit of pique. In either case, the message was clear. In the perfect family of the Olympians, there was no room for imperfection. But the rejected son was also a genius. Years later, he decided it was time to announce his existence to the mother who had discarded him. He forged a magnificent throne of gleaming gold and polished ivory, inlaid with gems, and sent it to Olympus as a gift for the queen. Hera was overjoyed. The throne was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. She proudly sat down upon it, and the trap was sprung. Immediately, invisible fetters, stronger than any chain, wrapped around her, binding her to the seat. She was completely helpless. The gods panicked. Zeus hurled thunderbolts at the throne to no effect. Ares tried to break it with brute force and failed. The queen of the heavens was stuck fast. It is the ultimate mythological "I told you so," a divine timeout chair for the mother who had thrown him away. The gods knew only Hephaestus could free her, so they sent messengers to plead with him to return. He refused. For the first time, the outcast held all the power. Finally, the clever god Dionysus was sent. He didn't plead or threaten. He brought wine. He sat with the bitter, lonely smith god, shared a drink, and then another, until Hephaestus, roaring with drunken laughter, agreed to return. He was led back up to Olympus in a triumphal procession, riding on the back of a donkey, to finally free his mother. This act forced the Olympians to give him his due. He was given a permanent forge on the mountain, an honored seat among them, and, as a final, magnificent prize to appease him, he was given the hand of the most beautiful being in creation, Aphrodite. The marriage, of course, was a disaster. The union of the beautiful, flighty goddess of love and the lame, hard-working god of the forge was doomed from the start. As you know, she soon began her passionate, long-running affair with the handsome, brutish Ares. Hephaestus, the clever craftsman, was not a fool. He knew, but he did not challenge the god of war to a duel. He would not fight on Ares's terms. He would use his own weapons, his intellect, and his unparalleled skill. This is his second and greatest revenge. He announced to his wife that he was taking a trip to his favorite earthly retreat, the volcanic island of Lemnos. Aphrodite feigned disappointment but was secretly thrilled. The moment her husband's back was turned, she sent for Ares, who rushed to her golden bed. But Hephaestus had not gone to Lemnos. He had been preparing a masterwork of vengeance. Above the bed, he had rigged a trap, a net, forged from threads of bronze, so fine they were invisible to the eye, but so strong that not even a god could break them. It was magically tethered to the bedposts, ready to drop at a moment's notice. As Aphrodite and Ares were locked in a passionate embrace, the trap sprang. The invisible net fell, instantly enveloping them, pinning them together in the most compromising and helpless of positions. The god of war and the goddess of love were caught, naked and entangled. But Hephaestus wasn't satisfied with private victory. He flung open the doors to his bedchamber and bellowed for the other gods to come and witness the spectacle. All the male gods, Poseidon, Hermes, Apollo, rushed in. The goddesses, out of a sense of modesty, stayed away. The gods looked upon the trapped, humiliated lovers and erupted in laughter. Ares, the swaggering bully, could do nothing but glare impotently. Aphrodite, the goddess of irresistible charm, could do nothing but hide her face in shame. Hephaestus stood before them all, the wronged husband, and declared that he would not release them until Zeus had paid him back the original bride price he had given for his unfaithful wife. It was a moment of absolute triumph, the ultimate humiliation of the beautiful people by the outcast they had scorned. It's the mythological equivalent of discovering your partner is cheating and, instead of having a fight, you just live stream the evidence to all your friends and family while demanding a full refund for every date you ever went on. This is who Hephaestus is, the god whose pain and rejection fueled a creative genius that could outsmart anyone. His importance is measured by the things he made. He forged the celestial armor for heroes like Achilles and Aeneas, armor that made them nearly invincible. He crafted the terrifying aegis for Zeus and Athena. In some myths, he even assists the Cyclops in forging Zeus's thunderbolts, Poseidon's trident, and Hades' helm of darkness. He molded the first woman, Pandora, from earth and water. He built Talos, the giant, living bronze automaton that patrolled the shores of Crete. And in a truly remarkable feat of engineering, he created his own assistants, a group of golden handmaidens. These were not statues. They were lifelike female robots who could walk, talk, think, and assist him in his forge. This quirky tidbit makes Hephaestus the creator of the first sentient AI in Western literature. His connection to the working world was so strong that his main temple in Athens, the Hephaestion, was not isolated on the high Acropolis but situated in the Agora, the bustling city marketplace. It stood among the workshops of the potters, smiths, and artisans who saw him as their patron. Today, it remains the most remarkably well-preserved Greek temple in the entire world. And it leads to a fascinating thought. Historians still argue whether the figure of Hephaestus, the lame craftsman god, represents a memory of the high societal status of Bronze Age smiths, whose dangerous work with fire and metal often left them scarred or disabled, yet made them indispensable to their communities. His limp might not have been a symbol of shame, but a mark of his profession, a realistic consequence of a life spent in the forge. So you stand there, in the pulsing heat of the divine workshop. The great hammer still rings on the anvil. You no longer see a pitiable, crippled god. You see the powerful, creative engine of Olympus. He is the quiet, essential backbone of a family of glamorous, self-absorbed celebrities. He is the god who reminds you to never, ever underestimate the quiet ones, the ones who work with their hands, the ones the beautiful people dismiss. He is a testament to the idea that true power doesn't always lie in physical perfection or brute strength, but in the brilliant, patient skill to create and the cunning to use that skill to protect your own dignity. As he turns a piece of glowing metal on his anvil, you know his greatest humiliation of his rivals is now in the past. He is back to doing what he does best, making things that last. And as the story of the great humiliation spreads across Olympus, carried on the lips of the laughing gods, you can almost hear the winged sandals of the one god fast enough to tell everyone the tale. The rhythmic, deafening clang of Hephaestus's forge fades behind you, replaced by a sudden, exhilarating rush of wind. The intense, contained heat of the volcano gives way to the cool, fresh air of the open road. You are moving, no longer a stationary observer, but a traveler racing across the landscape. The world, which had felt so compartmentalized, the stormy peak of Olympus, the churning sea, the silent underworld, the fiery forge, is suddenly connected. Borders are being crossed. You are in the domain of the god of transitions, the divine messenger, the cosmic go-between. He doesn't arrive so much as he resolves out of the blur of motion. One moment there is just the wind whipping past. The next, he is jogging effortlessly beside you, a grin playing on his lips. This is Hermes. He is the youngest of the great Olympians, and he looks it. He is lean and athletic, built like a long-distance runner, not a heavyweight brawler. There is no intimidating aura of power, no grim weight of responsibility. His eyes sparkle with a restless, probing intelligence and a deep well of humor. He is the most approachable, the most charming, the most human of the gods. You notice his iconic equipment, the tools of his trade. On his head is the pedazos, a wide-brimmed traveler's hat to keep the sun from his eyes, though his is often depicted with a pair of small, jaunty wings. On his feet are his famous talaria, the winged sandals that carry him across the world with supernatural speed. And in his hand, he carries the caduceus, his herald's staff. It is a slender rod, entwined with two serenely facing serpents and topped with wings. This is not a weapon. It is his diplomatic passport, the symbol of his office that grants him safe passage into any realm, be it a king's court or the gates of the underworld itself. To understand Hermes, you need only look at the very first day of his life. It is a masterclass in divine mischief and precocious genius. He was born at dawn, the son of Zeus and a shy mountain nymph named Maia, who gave birth in a deep, secluded cave. By midday, barely a few hours old, he was already bored. He crawled out of the cave, found a tortoise ambling by, and had an idea. With a speed and dexterity that defied his age, He killed the tortoise, scooped out its insides, and stretched 7 strings of sheep gut across the hollow shell. In a single afternoon, he had invented the lyre. By evening, his restless intellect craved a greater challenge. He zipped from his cave all the way to the mountains of Pieria, where his older half-brother, the great Apollo, was tending his magnificent herd of divine cattle. The infant Hermes stole 50 of the finest cows, but he was too clever to just lead them away. To confuse any pursuers, he cleverly reversed the hooves of the cattle, making it look like the herd had walked backward to its pasture. To hide his own tracks, he wove sandals for himself out of tamarisk and myrtle branches. It was the world's first act of forensic countermeasures. On his way back, he stopped to invent a new way to make fire by rubbing sticks together, sacrificed 2 of the cows to the 12 Olympian gods, cheekily including himself in the count before he'd even been formally invited, and then scurried back to his cave. He slipped back into his crib, wrapped himself in his swaddling clothes, and put on his most innocent, helpless, just-born baby face. It was easily the most productive first 24 hours in mythological history. Most newborns are still figuring out object permanence. Hermes had already checked off invent a musical instrument and commit grand larceny from his to-do list. Of course, Apollo, the god of prophecy, was not fooled for long. He tracked the theft to Maia's cave and confronted the infant. Hermes, with the unblinking confidence of a seasoned con artist, swore he had no idea what Apollo was talking about. A cow? What's a cow? I was only born yesterday. The dispute went all the way to Zeus. When Apollo presented his case, and the evidence against the baby in the crib was laid bare, Zeus didn't react with anger. He burst into laughter. He was utterly delighted by the audacity, the cleverness, and the sheer nerve of his newest son. To smooth things over, Hermes picked up the lyre he had invented and began to play. The music was so beautiful and enchanting that Apollo's anger melted away. He was so captivated by the instrument that he offered to trade the entire herd of cattle for it. The deal was struck. Hermes the thief became Hermes the diplomat. They became the best of friends. The incident cementing Hermes' reputation as a liar, a creator, a thief, and a charmer, all in one go. His domains are as varied and numerous as his talents. First and foremost, he is the messenger of the gods, their angelos. He is the one who carries Zeus's decrees to mortals, who delivers summonses to other gods, and who can move freely between all the realms. He is the god of travelers, of merchants, of roads, and of all those who live their lives on the move. He is also the god of boundaries, both literal and figurative. Throughout ancient Greece, his sacred images, called Hermes, marked crossroads, gateways, and property lines. These were simple stone pillars, topped with a bearded head of the god and, most notably, a prominent, erect phallus, a symbol of his power as a god of luck, protection, and fertility. These Hermes were so sacred that a famous historical incident occurred in 415 BCE on the eve of Athens' disastrous military expedition to Sicily. Overnight, a huge number of the city's Hermes were vandalized and mutilated. This act of sacrilege threw the entire city into a panic, and it was seen as a terrible omen, a major political and religious crisis from which the expedition never recovered. Naturally, as the god of commerce, he is also the god of thieves. He represents the fine line between a clever bargain and an outright scam. He is the patron saint of Wall Street traders, fast-talking salespeople, and the guy in a trench coat selling genuine designer watches in a back alley. It's a very broad portfolio. He blesses those who live by their wits. But he has one final, more somber role. He is the psychopompos, the guide of souls. When a mortal dies, it is Hermes who appears, his caduceus in hand, to gently lead their soul down into the darkness, guiding them along the hidden paths to the banks of the river Styx, where he hands them over to the grim ferryman, Charon. You saw Charon when you journeyed to the underworld, but it is Hermes who ensures you get there. He is the comforting presence in the terrifying transition from life to death. His cleverness is his greatest weapon, which he uses to great effect in the service of Zeus. You'll recall the story of Io, the poor priestess turned into a heifer by Zeus and guarded by Hera's 100-eyed giant, Argus. Zeus sent Hermes to rescue her. Hermes didn't arrive with a sword drawn. He came disguised as a humble shepherd. He sat down near the giant and began to play his reed pipes, a soft, lulling melody. Then he began to tell stories. He told the most boring, monotonous, sleep-inducing stories imaginable. His voice a gentle, hypnotic drone. One by one, Argus's 100 eyes began to droop and close. When the last vigilant eye was finally shut, Hermes swiftly drew his sword and ended the giant's watch forever. This heroic act of strategic boredom earned him the eternal epithet Argifontes, the slayer of Argus. Because he is a god of boundaries and transitions, his very nature is fluid. Historians still argue whether Hermes' role as a psychopomp or soul guide is an original feature of his character or a later development, syncretized from earlier chthonic deities responsible for travel between the worlds of the living and the dead. His identity as a liminal god, a god of the spaces in between, makes him a perfect candidate to absorb the attributes of other similar deities over time. You see him now not as a major power player like the three great brothers, nor as a specialized craftsman like Hephaestus, nor as a terrifying force of nature like Ares. He is something else entirely. He is the divine nervous system of the cosmos, the connective tissue that links every other part. He is the god who talks his way out of trouble, the friend who always knows a guy who knows a guy, the charming rogue who helps you move, though you'd be wise to count your boxes after he leaves. He is the embodiment of communication, of commerce, of the quick flash of insight that solves an impossible problem. He is the patron of the internet, the stock market, and the diplomatic corps, all rolled into one charismatic package. A final gust of wind, and he's gone, off on another urgent errand for the king of the gods. He leaves behind not a sense of awe or terror, but a feeling of lightness, of endless possibility. His energy is all about connecting the disparate parts of the world, Olympus to Earth, Earth to the underworld. And as his presence fades, you feel your own perspective shifting, turning from the high-concept dramas of the gods to the very ground beneath your feet. You are being drawn towards the fundamental forces of the earth itself. The soil that gives the harvest, the vine that gives the wine, and the wild, untamed forests that lie at the edge of civilization. The exhilarating rush of Hermes' passing fades, and you are left standing in the sudden, quiet stillness of the mortal world. The air is warm and heavy with the scent of sun-baked earth and golden wheat. You are in a vast, ripe field. the stalks rustling softly around you in a gentle breeze. The dramas of Olympus seem a world away. Here, the concerns are more fundamental, more tied to the soil itself. Will the rains come? Will the harvest be good? Will there be enough to eat? You are now in the realm of the gods who walk the earth, whose powers are written in the cycles of life, grief, and nature itself. You feel a presence here, not a flighty messenger or a thunderous king, but something more ancient and steadfast. She is Demeter, the goddess of the harvest, of grain, of the sacred laws, and of the fertile earth. She is often depicted not as a lithe maiden or a celestial queen, but as a mature, matronly figure, her bearing full of a sober dignity. Her joy means abundance and full bellies for all of humanity. Her sorrow means famine and despair. And her story is one of the most profound sorrows in all of mythology. We have seen it from below, from the dark throne room of Hades, but now you feel it from her perspective. You see her daughter, Persephone, a girl on the cusp of womanhood, the very essence of spring, laughing in a sun-drenched meadow, gathering wildflowers. Demeter watches her with a love so deep it is the foundation of the world's fertility. Then, the horror. The earth groans and splits apart, and the dark king of the underworld emerges, snatching the screaming girl and dragging her down into the darkness. What follows is a mother's nightmare on a cosmic scale. Demeter's grief is absolute. She casts off her divine robes, lets down her hair, and wanders the earth as a grieving old woman, searching, calling for her lost child. And as she grieves, the world grieves with her. She is the goddess of the harvest, and in her sorrow, she forgets her duties. The grain refuses to sprout. The fruit withers on the vine. The leaves fall from the trees, and the earth becomes a barren, frozen waste. This is the first winter, a world held hostage by a mother's broken heart. Humanity, caught in the crossfire of this divine tragedy, begins to starve. This powerful myth of loss and return became the foundation for the Eleusinian mysteries, one of the most important and secretive religious cults in the ancient world. For nearly 2,000 years, people made a pilgrimage to the town of Eleusis, near Athens, to be initiated into its secret rites. We still don't know exactly what happened during these rituals, as initiates were sworn to absolute secrecy, but we know they involved a symbolic reenactment of Demeter's story and promised a hope that the great Greek myths rarely offered, a blessed and happy afterlife. It was a promise that even if you must descend into darkness like Persephone, you can, in time, return to the light. It's a testament to how deeply this story of a mother's love resonated with ordinary people. Eventually, of course, a deal is struck. Persephone, having eaten the pomegranate seeds, must spend part of the year in the underworld. And each year, when her daughter descends, Demeter mourns, and the world grows cold. When Persephone returns, her mother's joy brings back the spring. As the image of the grieving mother fades, the quiet field of wheat dissolves. You find yourself on a sun-drenched hillside, covered in the twisted, ancient vines of a vineyard. The air grows thick with the sweet, fermenting scent of grapes, and you hear a sound beginning in the distance, the sound of laughter, of wild music played on pipes and drums, of ecstatic shouting. This is the domain of the liberator, the outsider, the god of pure, unbridled release. This is Dionysus. He is the twice-born god, a latecomer to Olympus with a dramatic origin. The son of Zeus and the mortal Semele, who was incinerated by seeing Zeus's true form. He was rescued as an unborn fetus and stitched into his father's thigh to be born again from Zeus himself. He is a god of the fringes, a patron of those who don't fit into the neat, ordered boxes of society. He is the god of wine, theater, madness, and ecstasy. He is joyful, beautiful, often depicted as androgynous, and he is a chaotic force of nature. His gift to humanity is wine, and with it, a freedom from the self. His power is the power to dissolve boundaries, to break down inhibitions, and to let the wild, primal part of the soul run free. He's the patron god of wine nights, music festivals, and binge-watching an entire season of a truly dramatic show. He simply understands the fundamental human need for a release. His followers were the Maenads, or Bacchants, primarily women who would answer his call, leaving their homes and their weaving looms to dance in the wilderness. In a state of divine frenzy, they were said to possess supernatural strength, tearing wild animals apart with their bare hands. They carried the thyrsus, a curious symbol of his cult. It was a simple staff made from a giant fennel stalk, topped with a pine cone and often wreathed in ivy. It was a potent symbol of fertility, but in the hands of a frenzied Maenad, this seemingly harmless object could become a deadly weapon. Dionysus embodies the duality of his gift. Wine can lead to joy, camaraderie, and spiritual ecstasy, but it can also lead to violence, madness, and ruin. He is not a safe god, but he is a deeply compassionate one. The wild music of his followers begins to fade, the scent of wine dissipates, and you find yourself transported once more. The sun-drenched vineyard is gone, replaced by the deep, silent woods under the sharp, silver light of a full moon. The only sounds are the hoot of a distant owl and the soft snap of a twig underfoot. You are in the domain of the third great virgin goddess, the untamed hunter, the queen of the wilds. This is the home of Artemis, twin sister of Apollo. She is the goddess of the hunt, the wilderness, wild animals, and the moon. She is fiercely, relentlessly independent. Where other goddesses are defined by their relationships with men as wives, mothers, or lovers, Artemis is defined by her absolute self-sufficiency. She asked her father, Zeus, for an eternal childhood, a bow and arrows, and a pack of hunting hounds, and she has roamed the wild places of the world ever since, accompanied by her band of devoted nymphs who have also sworn off marriage. She is a goddess of contradictions. She is the protector of wild animals, yet she is the greatest hunter who ever lived. She is a patron of childbirth, yet she is a virgin who shuns all romantic entanglement. She represents the part of nature that civilization can never truly tame. To enter her domain is to accept her rules, and her rules are absolute. Her most famous and most terrifying myth illustrates this perfectly. A young mortal hunter named Athena is out with his hounds. He wanders deep into the woods and, by a terrible stroke of bad luck, stumbles upon a secluded grotto where Artemis and her nymphs are bathing. He sees the goddess naked. Her reaction is not one of maidenly fear. It is one of cold, divine fury. Her privacy, her sacred space, has been violated. She doesn't scream or run. She scoops up a handful of water and splashes it in his face. As the droplets touch his skin, he begins to transform. Antlers sprout from his head, His neck elongates, his skin turns to hide, his hands and feet to hooves. In moments, he is no longer a man, but a magnificent stag. His own 50 hunting dogs, catching his scent, see only their prey. They cannot hear his panicked, human thoughts. They fall upon him, tearing him to pieces. It is a swift, brutal, and horrifying punishment, and a stark reminder that some boundaries should never, ever be crossed. It's the ultimate divine, no trespassing sign. The fierce autonomy of Artemis has long fascinated scholars. Historians still argue whether Artemis's fierce defense of her virginity and her association with the wilds represent a rejection of the patriarchal structure of the Greek city-state, making her a symbol of female autonomy, or if she embodies a pre-civilized state of nature that must be respected but ultimately kept separate from ordered society. She is a complex and powerful figure, a goddess who needs no one. It almost makes you feel bad for your own family, whose holiday dinners now seem quite manageable by comparison. Now, as the image of the stern, moonlit huntress begins to soften, you can feel our long journey coming to its end. The sharp, vivid portraits of these powerful, passionate, and deeply flawed beings start to recede, like figures walking away into a soft and welcoming mist. The crackle of Zeus's lightning, the roar of Poseidon's waves, the cool silence of the underworld, the clang of Hephaestus's hammer. All of these sounds are fading now, becoming gentle echoes in the quiet landscape of your mind. The stories have been told, and the gods are retreating to their proper home in the realm of myth, their immense and chaotic energies quieting down as you prepare for your own peaceful rest. Feel the weight of their world lifting from your shoulders, leaving behind only the pleasant afterglow of a story well told. The journey through their dangerous and beautiful reality is over, and you are safe now, drifting in the calm and quiet space that comes just before sleep. These ancient tales, born of a need to explain the thunder and the turning of the seasons, the passions of the human heart and the finality of its last breath, can now become a part of your own dreamscape. Let the final images dissolve. The silver light of Artemis's moon filters down through the leaves of a deep and silent forest, a place of profound peace and rest. The air is cool and still. You can feel yourself letting go of the day, of the world of striving and hurry, and sinking gently into a place of deep and effortless calm. There is nothing left to do, nothing left to see. There is only this stillness, this quiet, this gentle drift into your own sweet dreams.